Hello, this is John from caveofprogramming.com, and in this tutorial we're going to look at how you handle sessions when the user has disabled cookies in their browser, which is absolutely something that a user might do. And you could say, okay, you could check to see if they have cookies enabled, and if not, display a page that says, sorry, you have to enable cookies to use this site. But that's kind of annoying for the user, and a better way of handling that is the way that I'm going to show you here. Now, I've said before that the session object is it's saved using cookies that are set on the browser, and this also applies to like beans that have session scope. So if you have a JSP use bean and it has session scope, if the user disables cookies, then that bean is not going to remember itself from page to page. So in either case, if you're using sessions either through beans or this session object or in any way at all, then you need to think about how to handle that situation. Now at the moment I've got this little demo where there's this session servlet. It's called session, could be called anything of course, and it checks the session to see if there's a cart object, and if there isn't, it creates a cart, sets the items in the cart, and then sets the cart into the session, and then it forwards to show cart.jsp. Let's just run that and take a look at what it looks like, and then show cart.jsp just gets the cart from the session and then displays the total items in it there. And of course the cart object that I created here, that could have all kinds of methods. It could be any kind of object, whatever you like really. So I'm going to create another kind of link in this chain. So at the moment session is going to show cart.jsp, and I'm going to create another JSP here. So let's go to new JSP and let's call this show cart2.jsp. Click finish. And I'll just copy the stuff from showcart.jsp here actually and paste it into showcart2.jsp. Now with showcart2.jsp I'm going to have a link in showcart here that ordinarily would go through the controller, and that's fine. So everything I say here will apply to links that go via the controller. But just to speed this tutorial up a bit, I'm just going to have a direct link actually in showcart.jsp to showcart2.jsp. So we'll have a href equals, and that's going to go to whatever your URL of showcart2.jsp is. Let's see if I can run that. Let's select it down here and run it. And I need this URL here. So the context root and showcart2.jsp on the end of it, and let's go to showcart.jsp. Whoops, and paste that in to the href here. And let's say click here to go to showcart2.jsp. Not the kind of text you'd normally put in a link of course, but whoops, here I just want to kind of demonstrate the principle. Now if I just run this, let's run session here, and this built-in browser in Eclipse, it has cookies enabled. So it says items in cart, so my session servlet has set the cart into the session, and my showcart.jsp, which is actually what we're seeing here because it's been forwarded from the session servlet, is showing me a number of items in the cart, so it can get the cart. And if I click to go to showcart2, that can also get the cart. But now let's look at what happens if I disable cookies. So I'm going to go to Chrome here, and this is my browser that I usually use, Google Chrome, and I'm just going to disable cookies in it. So I'll go to settings here, and this might be different in your version of Chrome, but if I scroll to the bottom, there's a show advanced settings and content settings, and I'm going to say block sites from setting any data, which in fact I've already set it because I was testing this out earlier on. Click OK. Now I'm going to create a new incognito window here, and just because I want to clear any, actually this doesn't really matter in this case because there aren't any cookies to clear, but I just sort of like these incognito windows, I suppose. And now I'm going to, let's go back here in, let's go to the browser here and go to, in fact the URL I want will look like, yeah, if I go back, so there's my servlet, and I just want to go to my servlet in Google Chrome with cookies disabled. So I'm going to say here, I'm going to paste this in, and now even though cookies are disabled, I've still been able to get the cart object out of the session, and that's because if you disable cookies and you do a forward, like here I've done a forward using their request dispatcher, or if you do an include in a JSP to go to another file, as long as you're basically forwarding on the server side, which is what this is, then your session will still be there and available. But the problem comes when you click on a link, because now how would showcart2.jsp be able to get the cart from a session? How would it remember the session? Because if I go to another link, that appears to the servlet or to the JSPs to be like a separate request, and the browser isn't remembering anything between sessions, between requests either. So nothing has any way of remembering the session. And if I click on this now, I get a null pointer error. And in fact my showcart2.jsp is trying to use this cart, but when it tried to get the cart was null. And now we're going to fix that. So to fix it, the first thing to say is that when you try to get something out of the session, you probably want to just check and make sure that it's not null. So here I get the cart, and when I use it here, maybe I should say in this expression tag question mark, so I'll use this ternary operator in Java here, this is standard Java, and I'll say, well actually I'll say here cart equals null, and if it does I'll just output error or something more creative, and if it's not null, if it isn't null, then I can say cart.getTotalItems, and let's just copy that and paste that into showcart.jsp. And now I can at least say that, well, if I restart the server, recompile these things, let's click finish, and I just want to highlight the session there, run that. And oh, I think I have a syntax error there. Let's just go to showcart.jsp. So I said here, if cart is equal to null, then yeah, show error otherwise. So I wanted to actually that colon is fine, and the question mark there. So standard Java, but I managed to confuse myself anyway. Let's just copy that and paste it in here. And there we go, and now that should work. So now if I just start this, restart Tomcat here, let's go to Chrome, and so I'll go to this URL, and if I go to showcart2.jsp, it tells me error, so it's telling me the cart is null, so at least I've handled the error gracefully. But now what we want to do is fix it properly, and the way to do that is you can encode all your URLs in such a way that if cookies are disabled, it will put a session ID in the URL that enables you to keep tracking the session, and you have to do that for every URL that the user might click on. And if you've used internet banking or pretty much any site that was Java based, you will probably have noticed, or at least seen, even if you didn't notice, this session ID thing that I'm about to show you. Possibly anyway, especially if you disable cookies. So the way to do that here is whenever you have a URL, and I'm going to use here a expression tag, and I'm going to say request. Actually, no, I'm not. I'm going to say response dot encode URL like this, and the URL to encode must be a URL that's complete. It doesn't have to include the domain name, and it shouldn't, because the domain name will change when you upload your application or deploy it somewhere, but it should include the context route. And to get the context route, rather than hard code it, I'm going to say request.get context path, and that's just going to get me, of course, the initial bit of the URL. It's going to get me, in this case, this bit of the URL, which again might very well change when you deploy your application. So when you have URLs, it's really good practice to say request.get context path, even if you don't care about cookies being switched off. Then I'm going to add to that just the bit of the URL that I want to go to. So let's put in there showcart2.jsp. There we go. And I'll get rid of that stuff. So basically, all I'm doing is, instead of hard coding a URL in there, I'm using this expression tag, and the first bit of the URL, I'm getting the context path here, and then I'm hard coding the second bit of the URL, because it's okay to hard code that. But usually this would be usually we would use like a servlet name here that would be the controller, and then this would have an action parameter maybe on the end of it, and then I'm encoding the whole thing using response.encode URL. And let's see what difference that makes. So if I just run this now, let's go to my servlet here, and if I just run that, then the URL looks just as normal. And if I click on this, you can see there's nothing funny about the URL at all, and that's because I've got cookies switched on here. But if I go to a browser that doesn't have cookies activated, so let's go to this URL. Now the URL, I don't know if you can see down in the status bar at the bottom, is very different. And if I click on this, so it's added this JSession ID to the URL, and that enables my server to track the session. And you can see now my showcart2.jsp can still get the cart, so it's maintained the session. So in a nutshell, when you add URLs, when you hard code your URLs into JSPs, good practice is to always use this, where are we, response.encode URL and response.get context path, and then the rest is going to be a servlet or a JSP or whatever. So that's it for this tutorial, and until next time, happy coding.